Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another Reverse 1999 reaction. Today we have a request from XG417, who said I should listen to Boots, Hats, and Tails. And this one was specifically pointed as a certified Texan classic, so I at least expect that we'll be getting into the country genre for the first time in quite a while. I think the last time we even touched on this genre was one of the Arknights songs that had kind of that vibe going for it as well, but I don't know what this is going to sound like. Is it going to be a little bit more bluegrassy? Is it going to be more like stadium country, which in my opinion kind of isn't country, but I'm not going to get too far into that. I do love some country, but as a corn-fed country boy myself, this needs to be like a real country song for me to be able to respect it as such. It can't just be some sort of like Hollywood misunderstanding of what country is, you know? So I guess we'll find out. I hope it's something I can actually appreciate, but I won't know until I listen. So without further ado, let's go.
So, ladies and gentlemen, look who's here. If it ain't Miss August. Hey, hey, hit it, boys. I'm gonna tell everybody about the woman you
Okay,
see.
it's rockabilly. I won't argue yet.
Don't get mad at me. Let me tell you about a lady who you
At least it's bluesy, you know?
Mama, bless my soul, it's true. And you can ask anyone in town. If you're messing around, I'm gonna take you down.
I can at least get behind it.
Miss August is long, Miss August is lean. There's nowhere you can hide where you won't be seen, it's true. And you can ask
Interesting accent break there. Just a weird timing for it.
You've been messing around, I'm just gonna take you down. Well, I just got a cheetah somewhere out east. Now he's eating his breakfast without no teeth. It's true.
Also, what did Walter White do, you know? I know he gets into trouble, but like, Jesus.
If you've been messing around, I'm just gonna take you down. She wears a wide brim hat, she's old school. She make a big bad man look like a little fool. It's true. And you can ask anyone in town.
I like that the lyrics are staying true to the folk story, you know? Doing this storytelling thing from folk music is nice. I like that.
Hey, ask anyone in town. All right, if you're messing around, I'm just gonna take you down. From Amarillo all the way to Wichita Falls, someone knows you must.
Again, such a weird break there. It's such a weird placement in the song. It's not necessarily bad, though. It's just different.
Never tell from the way she speaks. It's true, and you can ask anyone in town.
Overdoing the accent for the sake of the story.
If you're messing around,
All right.
I'm just gonna take you down.
Having fun.
From a cowgirl hat to a cowgirl boot, she's a Texas girl with Texas roots. It's true, and you can ask anyone in town. Oh yeah, if you're messing around, I'm just gonna take you down. You know the barrels of a shotgun as big as a tree, and I hope she don't point that thing at me or you. And you can ask anyone in town.
I'm really liking the story aspect of it. The lyric writing is definitely like my favorite part.
I just get the news from the radio, and every night she's tuned in to the Tonight Show. It's true, and you can ask anyone anytime. But if you're messing around, I'm just gonna take you down. But she the one bad lady, this I know, 'cause everybody done told me so. Whoa, 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 whoa. Let's all just calm down a minute here. Woo!
Yeah, I really like the storytelling in it.
Ask anyone in town.
That's really well done.
If you've been messing around, oh, it's gonna take you down.
All right. All right, better than I honestly expected. All right, so this song has some good, bad, and ugly, and that was not meant to be a reference. It's just the best way to describe what I'm going to be getting into. So I'll actually do so in order: the good, the bad, and the ugly. Nothing is really all that bad in this, but it does have some stuff that I was a little disappointed in, but overall it was still really fun. To start off with the good, just having that folky storytelling, keeping the story together, kind of explaining who the subject of the song is. That's very traditionally country, very traditionally bluegrass, and everything else that kind of branched out of the folk genre in general. And just telling a story is exactly what folk music is. So when that became country later and it splintered off into God knows how many subgenres since then, a lot of it has actually lost that ability. So hearing that is really nice, and it's a very true to form way to tell people about a person and getting information in there just to give you an idea of who they are. It's a tried and true way to do that. It's always worked and people will always do it. And it really just allows you to have this really down home way of just explaining things outright. It's the same reason why everybody loves people like Johnny Cash. It's what they did. It's what Johnny Cash did all the time, just telling stories in the form of a song. It's what every folk artist has ever done, a lot of blues artists, and this is very bluesy, it's very rockabilly bluesy, and that all fits the genre as well. I would definitely lean in and say that this is more rockabilly than blues, of course, because of the overall aesthetic of the song. The instruments used are very bluesy, but the approach to the storytelling is a little bit more rockabilly, but it still has that like homegrown feel of storytelling that those genres have grown from and made into their own. And I like hearing that in this and having these moments where they're like explaining things they've done, like accolades that they've checked off of their bucket list, is just a really cool way to go through that story and introduce us to the character, which is exactly what this whole song is doing. And it has a bunch of references in the video as well, like the whole Better Call thing for Better Call Saul. That was funny. I think the Walter White thing was actually intentional, if that's the case. I also think I saw some of the guys from No Country for Old Men in there, which was really fun too. I don't know if those were intentional, but I'm assuming if the Better Call Saul one and the Walter White one are real, that the No Country for Old Men ones probably were too, so love that. I love little Easter eggs like that. That's fun. Has nothing to do with the story overall, but it definitely fits in that atmosphere, and it helps you kind of ground to something a little bit more culturally relevant if you're not used to country music or like what this aesthetic is, and that kind of bridges two generations of people, because a lot of younger people wouldn't know No Country for Old Men, but a lot of them would know Breaking Bad, so it's a good way to be like, hey, look, this is kind of the vibe we're going for here. Gather around and let us tell you the story of this character. I think that's really neat. Another good thing is the overall writing of the song itself was really nice, and it was very clear. It felt true to form. It felt like a recording that was just literally a few microphones placed in front of a band on a stage, just the old-fashioned form of recording where you would maybe go into a studio in a recording session at a radio station and just play, and you get that sort of reverb in the microphone and everything, and it just feels a little bit more tactile and like a little imperfect, and I do like that. But the writing for itself is kind of where we start getting into this, like maybe that's not as great and kind of dipping towards the bad a little bit, because I feel like that was a little bit disjointed. And yes, you could argue that a lot of folk songs and a lot of rockabilly stuff, especially when that genre was like first starting out, that's kind of how it was recorded. It was recorded a little run and gun, and it was written a little run and gun. Like you usually didn't sit down and practice and like fully flesh out a structure of a song to be able to follow verbatim every single time, and things and aspects of it, lyrics even, would change per performance constantly. So sometimes even the recordings that you would hear on old vinyls wouldn't be the same as they are played live sometimes, and they would change those aspects of the songs to keep them a little bit more fresh, maybe update them as the story kind of updates. It depends on how new the song was. Some songs were written as the people were still alive that they were talking about, so it's like there was a very like active form of music writing at the time, and that's why folk music is so important. But it's mostly just the certain breaks that they were taking. They made those consistent in this, and every single time the rest of the band dipped out right after coming back in, right after all of the energy of the chorus. That's where it kept confusing me. I'm like, why are they dropping out the instruments here and just kind of doing this rhythmic backing of just the guitar and keeping that going? It just felt odd. It felt a little bit chunky, and while it's not necessarily wrong, it just kind of hit my like rhythmic brain a little iffy. I don't really know if I could ever call that a bad thing. It's just something that my brain picked apart as like that was an odd choice. So that's why I don't know if I would call it a bad thing, but it's probably the closest thing to bad I could say in this. The rest of it was really fun. So it was just that one aspect of the song where I'm like, this doesn't make sense. The rest of it was fine. The rest of the structure, the blues chords being used, the overall just like pattern, the guitar and everything was all great. The drums, even the mix of the drums, again, kind of sounding like those were in the back, like on a stage behind all the other instruments. They were just much more recessed in the mix. I like that feel. That was really done well, but that one aspect of the song's writing just makes me kind of scratch my head a little bit. Like, why did they pick that to do? It just felt a little bit strange. And the ugly part is going to be me arguing semantics that while this is definitely like a blues-inspired, rockabilly-inspired sound, that's like a Memphis thing. That's more of like a Tennessee, maybe Louisiana, depending on how far south you want to go with the blues influence. Like, that is more the part of the world that this is, not Texas. Texas had a completely different sound that they were doing around the time that this was popular. And sure, there's definitely like fusions happening, and music as a language worldwide has always been shared around. And it's not like the United States are impossibly huge to the point where that influence didn't make its way down. But it's definitely most likely not the sound that you would actually hear a song like this telling you about somebody in Texas. It's just an interesting choice as far as that goes. So I would expect something a little bit more like Willie Nelson or Milton Brown, maybe like Waylon Jennings, someone that's a little bit more local to that area that would have a song more in that genre. It's a little bit more of like a country swing, like an outlaw rock sort of thing. Not so much this, which is definitely more of that like Nashville side of things, way over there comparatively. And maybe you could argue that this is just like their perspective, their sound, telling a tall tale of a person from Texas, and I could definitely agree with that, but that's why I'm just arguing the semantics over like telling a story like this, talking very clearly about her accolades and everything, but then having a completely different sound influence from a different part of the world at the time where, like, sure, there was that crossover, but it wasn't quite as clear as it is now, and technology wasn't there, so, like, stories traveled and tall tales got bigger, so I feel like while they're talking about her accolades pretty clearly here, none of them feel, like, scaled enough to be of a tall tale sort of status. So, again, semantics. I'm not saying that it's a bad song because of that, but that's why this counts as the ugly category, because there's definitely some like slop in the reference there, whether or not I would personally count this, but that's also me really getting picky, which is why I don't necessarily fully subscribe to this sentiment. It's just something to think about when you're thinking about like the world you're making this song in and the context around it. I'm sure that the people who wrote this kind of were aware of what sound they wanted to go to, but I don't know if they dug deep enough into the overall influence of the musical sound of the South in America at the time to really get what tone they probably should have used for a character like this. The rockabilly thing, that feels like it would fit her character. I see why they chose that. But I would even argue that you could get something closer to like I Will Survive by Stephanie Bentley. For those who don't know what that is, it's the song for Kissing Kate Barlow from Holes. Great song, and exactly what I would expect out of a song talking about a character like this. It's almost a one-to-one comparison as far as some of those things go. So like that's kind of what I'm going for. That sound would be a little bit closer in my opinion, because it's kind of more of that hybrid. It's more of that crosstalk between Nashville and Texas and those influences and what it became, versus this that felt a lot more rockabilly inspired and a lot more Nashville than I would have expected, something that sounds a little bit more Dallas or Houston. But I am going to stop yapping, because while I think I've made my points, I've definitely talked way too long on this video, although I hope a lot of you can at least understand where I'm coming from there. This isn't meant to be like a full-on teardown of this song, like I hate it because it's not perfectly contextually accurate. I mean, I may be a country boy, but I'm a northern country boy. I'm from like the rural side of the Mississippi side of Illinois naturally, and while I was born effectively in a gigantic cornfield, and I live in Iowa now, which is barely any better, if not worse in certain areas, it's like, okay, cool. that doesn't necessarily mean I'm an official on this sort of thing either. So like what I've come to learn from my country music background and those roots I have might be a little bit different from people who looked up specific inspirations in order to write this song. So I don't want to act like I am perfectly knowledgeable in this thing at all. It's just that certain aspects of it were kind of bugging me a little bit, but overall, still a really fun song and absolutely great as an overall folky song talking about a character, but I couldn't help myself from at least digging a little bit into it and sinking my teeth in and trying to pull back the layers a little bit to hopefully make you guys understand at least a little bit of where I'm coming from there. But I'll digress there. Thank you all so very much for watching. If you have any other songs you want me to get to, by all means, drop them in the comments below and I will do my best to get to them as always. I'm not usually this scathing and picky, so if you have something you want me to listen to, don't be afraid that I'm going to tear it apart like this every single time. But either way, if you like this video and you want to follow me and support me for more stuff in the future, you know how to do all that, and I will see you all in the next video. Goodbye!